Hello and welcome to CLEA'S World. I am Clea and today I would like to share with you more of the information I've received from the 25th dimension during my last BQH hypnosis session. I'll be reading from a transcript of the session, and when I refer to Lorrayne, I'm speaking of my practitioner who's asking me questions I have prepared in advance of the session. And when I refer to me, I'm speaking of myself under hypnosis, which means that the answers are coming from the 25th dimension. As always, before starting to read, I would like to thank you for subscribing to my channel, liking and commenting on this video. I love seeing your comments. I really appreciate them so much. And even if you're just stopping by to say hi, it just makes me happy. So thank you so much for that. All right, I'm going to start reading here. And we are talking about the political situation in Italy to start with. All right, Lorrayne. Giorgia Meloni was elected as the first woman prime minister of Italy. She was immediately attacked by the media as being far right. We know she's had to work with the dark to get there, but is she on a team of the dark, or can we expect Italy to move more towards the light? Me. Yeah, so they're saying she's not on a team of the dark, but very, very heavily on the side of the dark, meaning that, which is kind of obvious. And no, we're not going to expect the same because nothing is the same anymore. We already said we're pretty much in a balanced polarity right now. And so everything we're seeing is just a show from the dark. And there's nothing to support it behind it. That's why things are collapsing very quickly. They tell you something and then it disappears, never to be heard of again. And so, yeah, I mean, she is, of course, the mainstream media plays the game, They throw out these scary words because, again, for people who want to play the game, they still want to be scared. They still want the excitement. Oh, my goodness, she's fascist. I don't know that you can be any more fascist than whoever was in charge for the last 3 years in Italy. I mean, basically, it was like in Australia with the lockdowns, etc. And they were laughing here. It's just the way it is. But no, things are changing now. So, of course, they backpedaled on their famous flu pandemic rules. And so, yeah, she's just, again, a shell. They're just here to make it look like everything is still the same. Nothing is the same anywhere in the world right now. That's why I wanted to share all of this with you, whether you care about what's happening in Italy or not. It's just a way for me to keep my finger on the pulse of what's going on around the world. Lorrayne, thank you. David would like to know about the China protests, if they're widespread or just small localized events. Will they achieve anything? Will they lead to the recall? And he's referring, obviously, to the recall of this thing. Me. Okay, so that's a good question, because when he says, will they achieve anything? What he's talking about is at a 3D level. Are we going to see an opening in China at a 3D level? Now, keep in mind, as I yourselves, we want the shell to stay in place. However, we expect also at 3D level, the certain extreme exercise of power would have a backlash. We had already said previously that things are different everywhere, including in China. We actually mentioned this a few sessions ago. We said, even in places like China, where everything looks so locked down and basically they are slaves, they're complete slaves, these people. They have social credit scores. They have been locking them in their buildings because, the famous flu. And even then, in China, we have already said these things were changing. And so now you just have the manifest reality of that polarity changing. Now, will it change something in terms of, will there be a revolution? We already said we don't want revolutions. We definitely don't want blood spillage if it can be avoided. We don't want a lot of drama. But we also expect that something like this would happen. It would be a natural progression. So because it has been so dark in China, it's been so dark everywhere. But in China, even at 3D level, we can very easily point and say, wow, that's really awful. Isn't China what makes us feel like we're free in the United States? The comparison with China, and they were laughing. Even though in the United States, there are states here that are no different from China, not much better than China, even from a 3D perspective. We've seen that. Just look at New York or California or whatever. Anyway, so because of that, they are making some changes. And again, it's not like they're going to collapse the government and they're just going to be free and there's going to be no government anymore. But we'll see some changes. We already said in previous sessions, we are seeing changes in governments everywhere. Governments resign en masse, and then new people have to come in. We said the new people are not better. However, the new people have an excuse not to do as much dark as before. And we look at it in a 3D way and say, Well, that makes sense because they just came in. They can't just do whatever they want. Their predecessor was thrown out for doing these things. So, of course, that's why they're not doing it. In reality, that's not really the reason they're not doing it. They're not doing it because we're not supporting it anymore. We are tired of this extreme negative polarity, and we've already fixed it. So, yes, these protests, will they bring something? Yes, there will be some changes in China. However, we also see that these protests, many of them will be squashed by the government, by the police. They don't just go along with it and say, oh, yeah, fine, it's okay to do this. But they'll hang in there, and they have our support, obviously. And so, yes, some changes will happen. It will not be like they're not going to have extreme freedom all of a sudden. And again, there isn't much time left, but they will see something. Now, his other question is, will this bring the recall? Now, the two things are not connected at a 3D level. Just saying, A, and because I have A, now I'm going to have B. However, yes, the real gist of his question, what he truly meant was, is this all connected? And yes, absolutely it is. It's all about the energy has changed, and we are wanting things to be much less negatively polarized. And the recall, we said many times, is a sign of that. It's just a signpost that, yes, we've done all this work in the background, and here's proof because they had the recall. So, of course, this is all part of it. So it's not that this particular event, this protest will bring the recall. It's that one country after the other, if you pay attention to the intel community or the news or whatever it is, you'll see one country after the other saying, in their small steps, they're saying, oh, we don't recommend the thing for children between 5 and 18 anymore. Other countries might say, we don't recommend it for people above 60 anymore. Or we don't recommend it for people who are immunocompromised. They're chipping away. None of them has said yet, we just don't recommend this thing anymore. This thing is crap. But you see, all of a sudden they're saying, well, no, we don't have enough data about these people. The data we have now about this class of people is that it's no good. We don't recommend anymore. They're chipping away. So these protests, are they chipping away? Yes, of course they are. They're all part of, it's all the same. We're controlling everything. And we're playing this game in multiple areas, and it shows up in different ways. But they're not doing anything different from what a lot of other countries have done. A lot of other countries have had protests. The reason we see it as being such a big deal is because from a 3D perspective, we know how repressed the Chinese are. They've dealt with things that we can't even imagine right now, including being locked in buildings that burned down, and people died inside because they couldn't come out, because the enforcers, the police or whoever it was protecting them by locking them inside buildings. So they had no escape. Imagine. No food, no nothing, leaving you inside a building to die. And so this is why we're having this protest. That was basically, it was the last hooray of the dark. And we saw the extreme we got into. And this is why we're not doing this anymore. This is all collapsed. Lorrayne, thank you. Okay, was Hurricane Ian engineered? And we heard a lot about this, and it's done a lot of damage. So I wanted to know, and this is obviously I'm talking about the United States. So Ian was in the southeast of the United States in Florida, and it might have had other areas as well, but I was thinking of Florida when I wrote this question. Me, yes, like most hurricanes. And I don't know whether this is still going on, but I guess suspected. I mean, the Floridians, for example, know that every year they might have something like this. So I guess it's why we're keeping this show in place. Lorrayne, thank you. Was the high school shooting in St. Louis on 10/24 of last year, and I cannot say this term, but let's just say it's one of those things that moves in the wind on top of buildings or boats, and it's not real, so it's fake. So was it that kind of event with one of these floating things? Me, yes, they're telling me that the kid actually had issues because, of course, they always use the right people. But yeah, it was, they wanted it basically. Yes, it didn't just happen, it was planned, which again is par for the course. Lorrayne, of course he was. Okay, Evelyn de Rothschild has been declared dead. Why is the dark retiring some big players? Me, because of what we said, it's a passage that we're having. We're at 3D reality level, even though it seems very subtle to us. They've retired the queen. The queen has been dead for many years, but now they finally found the right time. They were laughing. It was finally the right time to retire her. Same with Evelyn de Rothschild. They've retired a lot of big players, and we just don't know because we just don't see them on television anymore. So we think, oh, they're enjoying their retirement. They were laughing. They're not enjoying anything. But yes, so that's what's happening. It's just symbolically showing us that even the dark is saying, oh, we just can't keep playing the same card over and over. Otherwise, normally they would have had this person maybe live another 100 years if they could have. It's not that they want to retire these people. And it's music to my ears that they have to. Lorrayne, thank you. Okay. Catherine would like to know, was Bob Marley of the light? Me. He was in the middle. He was in the middle, and he wasn't even like to, he wasn't necessarily wanting to do light things, but he was definitely more towards the light than the dark. Yeah, he was just in the middle, but he was kind of almost middle. And the reason for that is that you don't become this big by being a thorn in the side of the dark, right? So while he was talking about all these great things, just like the Beatles, they were singing about all these wonderful things. They were all very much manipulated and of the dark. Now, it doesn't mean they were on the team of the dark, but these are all people that are, and they were subject to, I can't say the word, but they are subject to that type of programming that you guys are probably familiar with, that the dark is on for a long time. I mean, these people don't have the lives that we have, what we consider a normal life. So Bob Marley had to put up with a lot of stuff. So it was really in the middle. Okay. Catherine also wants to know, how about Nelson Mandela? Was he on the team of the dark or the light? And Clea adds, why did he go to jail? Why was he made president since politicians are usually from the dark? Me. Yeah, so Nelson Mandela, he was in the middle, and again, middle, but he has strong beliefs about what he wanted from a 3D perspective. Now, he's had to put up with a lot of stuff in his life. We know this, even going to jail. That was something that did happen to him, and it certainly wasn't pleasant. So he has done a lot of things that have inspired us. And we said before, we can be inspired by anybody along the spectrum. I mean, many people are inspired by, and they're referring to Senor T. We already said Senor T is not of the light, and so it's perfectly okay. We want to believe here that when somebody does something that we consider good, they have to be of the light. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to. You see, in the middle especially, but even really on the team of the dark, if you wanted to do something that we consider good every once in a while, doesn't mean you're not of the dark anymore. We're very judgmental, right? We always have to classify one thing or the other, and then by default, we have to classify the person. I mean, look again, Mother Teresa. I mean, a lot of people looked at that and said, oh my God, what a charitable woman. And then you find out she's not even a woman. They were laughing. And that was the least of the lies tied to Mother Teresa. So that's what we mean. We expect that Nelson Mandela, who's done so many inspiring things, really, has done so much to free his people. He's got to be of the light, but he wasn't of the light. And of course, we know this because had he been of the light, he would have never become president. He would have never even wanted to go into politics, because this is not something that people on the team of the light are interested in doing. Because we all know what that entails, that you have to work hand in hand with the dark. And so we're not saying he was on the team of the dark. Again, he was in the middle, but he wouldn't even have had the desire. His higher self would have just steered away from letting him run for politics, etc. Meanwhile, in the middle as he was, he's done a lot of good. But yeah, of course, he had to compromise heavily with the dark. He would have never survived otherwise. It's impossible. The dark controls all the power systems. So they're not gonna, it's just like you having a boss. They're not going to promote you if they don't like what you're doing. So that's why a lot of us don't even want to be involved in it. And so he was, because he was in the middle, he was able to slide along the scale, which again, totally fine, totally acceptable. He's done a lot of great things. But yeah, he wasn't of the light. Clearly, I mean, we can judge again from how you deal with the power systems. And this is a good key, I think, to discern things. Depending on how well you're doing within the power system, then we know really which side you're on. So we have said before, in every industry, the entire planet is controlled, has been controlled by the dark. All the systems have been, if not created, outright by the dark, completely infiltrated to where they are controlled. Everything has been controlled by the dark. So you can have people who are in the team of the light, you can have work in very dark systems because, of course, we all had jobs. We all interacted with the dark. We interact with the dark on a daily basis, even today. We already talked about the fact that we're using Zoom technology, not only a Chinese app, But that's a different degree of working with the dark. That's literally dealing with all these people who are asking you to make compromises and to do certain things that you don't want to do. That's what we're talking about. So for somebody to be willing to do that and think, yeah, but it's worth it to do what I want to do. That kind of thinking normally happens for people that are in the middle. It wouldn't necessarily happen for us. We've discussed this before, where we have an idea of what is right and wrong. That does not allow us to contemplate, to conceive certain notions. And they are referring to compromising, heavy compromises, saying, yeah, okay, I'll do this, but it's worth it because I want to do that. And that's always the reasoning in the back of the mind. I almost said excuse because it seems very convenient, but this is me judging from a 3D perspective, I realize. All right, I'm going to continue reading here. We would not feel good about ourselves. We would not be able to function if we had to do certain things. Whereas they kind of justify to themselves why they did it. And they say, yeah, but it's for the greater good. Because of course they don't think I'm a bad person. They're thinking, yeah, but in the great scheme of things, I'm doing this one thing, but then I can do 10 more that I want to do that are really going to be helpful. Now we know how it works. In reality, you don't get to do your 10 things you wanted to do. You never get to it. That's the story of most politicians, right? They go in thinking, well, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to do this and that. And then they are not allowed. The corporations don't allow them to pass even one of the laws they wanted to pass. But again, because we all know this, we all know how the game is played. That's why people on the team of the light are not going to go into politics. Lorrayne. Well, yes, I made a step into politics at city council level. I can't remember, at some point, I think in the late 2000s. And it was so dark on that level. I thought as a spiritual warrior, I can stand up to the dark and I can make a difference. And I never wanted to go near that again. It was so dark and so evil. I went, no, me. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you in the next one. Take care and bye-bye.